You ever had a plank or a railroad tie or something like that? It's long enough, it's on the ground, and you just walk across it, right? You put that thing over a chasm. Yeah, it's a whole different thing. Why is it a whole different thing? It's a whole different thing because your perspective has changed and fear has entered in. There is no difference. You can walk across that thing there, or you can Indiana Jones it across a cliff. It's still the same width and everything else. But one, you're brave, one, you're scared, and it changes the entire thing. One of my many pet peeves is frightened drivers. I can't stand frightened drivers. If you're afraid of the wheel, get out from behind it, please. You accelerate coming off an exit. You don't decrease speed and go, are they coming? Yeah, it's just very frustrating. Well, being afraid in the spiritual world is just as detrimental and just as foolish, because the plank is the same. The narrow path is the narrow path. If you know it, you should be able to walk that narrow path on the ground, or you ought to be able to walk it, if God asks you, through a center of two walls of ocean. I call this sermon, Look at the Horizon. And it's from Revelation 12, 1 through 6. A great sign appeared in heaven. A great sign. What we are about to read is a sign. Don't read more into it than should be read into it, but read into it enough. A great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven. An enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on its heads. Its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth so that it might devour her child the moment it was born. She gave birth to a son, a male child, who will rule all nations with an iron scepter. And her child was snatched up to God and to his throne. The woman fled into the wilderness to a place prepared for her by God, where she might be taken care of for 1,260 days. Father in heaven, I ask that the reading of your word will have done its work. Hold my tongue when it needs holding, loose it when it needs loosening, do it around me, through me, in spite of me, however it must be done. May your will be done. In Christ's name, amen. I have recently been teaching a young man to drive. That's fun. It always makes you wish you had the brake pedal over on your side. He's doing great. But it reminded me of other times in my life when I have helped other young people to get their driver's licenses. And every now and then you run into just a natural. You know what I mean? They've been playing Atari since they were little. They got hand-eye coordinations on. They're not afraid. They get out there and they drive. But every now and then you run into a natural. Most of the time, you must teach them how to think ahead. Just like chess, to be good, you can learn how to move the pieces and play. But to be good, you must learn how to think way ahead. Great drivers are like great chess masters. They are looking ahead of everyone else all the time and playing and planning around everyone else. Poor drivers are only worried about themselves. And they are only worried about the very next decision that's right in front of them. They stare at the road. Have you ever seen a new driver when they stare at the road right in front of the car? And so they're driving down the road and they have to make all these little adjustments because their eye is on the hood ornament instead of out on the horizon. They stare at the road that is right in front of them and they adjust to each triviality that presents itself. Or worse, the curve. They inch around the curve. You ever been with somebody that inches around the curve? Instead of finding the ark and leaning into it, they inch around the curve as though they were playing the old game where the snake gets longer if you don't eat yourself. In my spiritual life, I want to be a natural. And if I cannot be a natural, then I want to learn from the best that there is so that in the end, it can be said of me that I drove a good race or I ran a good race or what have you. I don't want to be a novice spiritual driver. I want to be an adept spiritual driver. I am never going to own a Maserati in this life. I've come to terms with that. But in the spiritual realm, I can have a Lamborghini if I use my talents that I have been given properly. Jesus tells us how to inherit a Lamborghini if we want one. He does. But first we must learn how to spot a Lamborghini. He says, this is the words of our Lord. He says, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much." It is more difficult than one might at first think, though, isn't it? There are many knockoffs. There are many replicas. Some have built a Lamborghini shell over a Yugo engine. I've seen it. Some decided that they are going to cling to what they have. They're going to cling to what they have so they never take risks. They're coming off of that exit just slow as can be, thinking somebody's going to run them over. Others have heard that the master is a hard man who reaps where he did not sow and gathers where he did not plant. And so they cling to the salvation that they received in Vacation Bible School, hoping to avoid the master's attention. Isn't that funny? Hiding from the one who gave you salvation. I guess it makes about as much sense as hiding from God in the garden. God wants you to fly. He wants you to mount up with wings like eagles. He wants you to run like a free deer in the field. He wants you to soar to new heights, embracing the fullness of life and the potential that He put within you. He isn't a hard man because He expects an unfair or exorbitant return on His investments. He is a hard man because He is a parent of children who wants his child to excel in every single area of their life, both spiritually and physically. And He loves us enough to do the hard work of lifting us to these higher spiritual planes, if we will let Him. He could coddle your fears and anxieties. He could, "Oh, poor little thing, you're so afraid, come here." Or He could be a good father and go face your fears, stand up like a man, put your shoulders back, and put your head into the wind. Time to put your nose to the grindstone. He could coddle your fears and anxieties, or He can make you face them and mature into an adult that He planned you to be. Life's a lot like driving. I see people doing it well, and I see people not so much. You can set your gaze right in front of you and nudge this way for a pothole, that way for a hamburger wrapper someone threw out the window, or back and forth, inching around an exit at 20 miles an hour under the speed limit, upsetting everyone behind you, who realized way before they even took the turn that you need to increase speed to merge, not decrease speed. Guess what happened to me on the way to church? No. But you are afraid of the other drivers. You are unsure of your own skills, and you are most cripplingly afraid of saying cripplingly. No. Cripplingly afraid of what? Death. Fear has made you a horrible driver. Fear will do the same thing with your life. The worst lives out there are driven by people who live in fear of everything and everyone around them. We watched them all have a meltdown over the last 4 years, did we not? And just like on the highway, their driving affected everybody, not just themselves. What does this have to do with Revelations chapter 12, Pastor? I'm so glad you asked. We are now on the second book of the two-book Revelation. If you were to break Revelation in two, if you were to split it right down the narrative middle, this is the center of the book. We're halfway through. The opening of the seals, the blowing of the trumpets, and the emptying of the bowls of wrath were all just general overviews of the entire history of salvation, especially the history and future of this woman, the bride of Jesus Christ. As we discussed early on, Revelation is presenting us with living pictures that embrace the macro and the micro realities of our existence, both the horizon and the up close. It is a picture book, not a puzzle book. I hope you are beginning to see the revelation as I see it. To me, it is like a fractal pattern. No matter how close you zoom in or how far you pan out, the picture stays the same. The same pattern flows eternally from the same pattern. I'm going to say that one more time. It's important. It's in the first few verses of the Gospel of John. The same pattern flows eternally from the same pattern. Over and over and over again, the Logos in action. The Logos bringing us into conformity with the telos, our end product, where Jesus says he will perfect us until he has fully arrived in his kingdom. The pattern is important because the pattern starts out at Genesis 1:1 and ends at the last chapter of Revelation. Only by lifting your eyes up from the immediate circumstances of your life and the immediate circumstances of the world and the immediate road that's right in front of you and casting your gaze out to the horizon will you ever achieve what you want to achieve. In this life, I have done a lot of dumb things. I know it's hard to believe. I've done so many dumb things, I could write a book. I was going to follow that with and smart things, but I will leave that discussion to history. And to be honest, I just can't tabulate that many incredible smart moments in my life. I did marry the most beautiful woman in the world, so I have that going for me. Among the stupid things that have been done in my life are many, many, many false gates into false spiritual realities. And I'd like to save you from them all. When I say that I have been a curious cat who has lost their lives 6 times, I'm not kidding. I went through a phase in my life when I practiced transcendental meditation. I went through a phase of studying divination like the I Ching or the tarot. I read Dr. Carlos Castaneda's work and Dr. Timothy Leary's entreaties for me to tune in, turn on, drop out. I studied the ceremonies that have been purported to access the spiritual levels or the astral planes. I have astral projected, and I have used entheogens to force my way through the temple veil. And most importantly, and most lastingly, and then finally, truth, I fell on my face before my God and begged him for help. I can't find the way out. Help me. In my relentless and sometimes foolish pursuit of truth and clarity amidst the tumultuous journey of removing the blinders from my perception, I have unearthed these 2 profound truths. Christ is the sole and only path, period. And the universe is an unfathomably vast, magnificent, and unsettling reality. In weaving together the wisdom of C.S. Lewis and the cosmic dread of H.P. Lovecraft, one begins to grasp the immense grandeur and terror that the universe has for us. Our slice of perception is embarrassingly small, and our understanding of the cosmos itself is but a flickering of light in the vast darkness of the unknown. We are the creature that stands on the razor's edge of infinity and finiteness and sees them both clearly. Just think how strange the world gets when a device that reveals heat waves to our visual spectrum alerts us to a larger way of viewing creation. Think about a dog can hear more than we hear, and a bee sees more than we see. Yet within this limited perspective, we glimpse hints of profound truths and profound mysteries that transcend our earthly comprehension. Like explorers navigating uncharted waters, we strive to unravel the secrets of existence and the secrets of God's creation, and He tells us to. Knowing that our quest will forever be humbled by the boundless depths of the universe around us. And that is exactly what this pericope is saying to us today. We are all taking part in the greatest story that has ever been told. Isn't that exciting? I love having a part in God's story. I love that He invites me to join His story. Stories that include the reader or the watcher. Stories that have what is called audience participation. Stories that involve the congregation or the audience are the best stories ever told. I had the entire first series. How many of you have read these? I had the entire first series of Choose Your Own Adventure novels. I love them. After that, they put out this thing called the Atari 2600. I was lost from that point on. That started to enter every single house, and I discovered that video games were just another way to incorporate the reader into a story in which they could make decisions and influence outcomes. If you want to know why that abysmal movie, The Rocky Horror Picture Show, is still hanging out and people still like it, ask no further. I know why. It was a worthless movie that incorporated audience participation. And it stuck. It not only stuck, it helped to usher in sexual deviancy into our nation. We can't resist 3D movies. Yep, just another way to immerse you into the plot. World of Warcraft, I loved it. That's a whole nother life. You can lose yourself totally in it. Many have. Then one day, while reading the scriptures, I realized that all of reality is nothing but the creator and author of all things inviting you and I to take part in the greatest story ever told. My story is bigger than myself. Thank God. It is larger. The story is larger than my personal concerns and my personal opinions about stuff. Everybody thinks I come to the Bible just going, check, Jesus. Yeah, I like it. I like it. I like it. Yeah, sometimes I go, I don't like that, Jesus, but you're Jesus, so I'll do it. God is asking me to be a key character in the eternal narrative. How in the world can you pass that up? One of the biggest questions ever asked was this. If God, and I'm sure you've all heard it, if God is all powerful, all knowing, and all present, then whence comes evil? I'll repeat it again. If God is all powerful, if God is all knowing, and God is everywhere, then where does evil come from? I'll never forget the day when I heard the first satisfactory answer that I had ever heard about that. And it isn't as good as Plantinga's definitive answer. He finally answered it. It will never be questioned again why. I encourage you to read his book. But it isn't as good as Plantinga's definitive answer, but it is still a deep and satisfying answer for me. And that answer is this. When you ask God why God allows this, that, or the other, you ask from the perspective that you know what the creation is about and what it's doing. Does that make sense? From the human point of view, a perfect creation is a Garden of Eden, which by definition has gone terribly, terribly wrong. But if that is not the goal, if our happiness in a hedonistic paradise is not the goal of creation, then perhaps the goal or the telos requires the absence of good in order to train and equip souls for eternal longevity. Everybody keeping up? If the purpose of the universe is happiness, then we are absolutely right to shake our fist at God because you did a real poor job. If happiness is the ultimate outcome and telos of the universe. If the purpose of the universe, however, is to birth souls that can last eternal, then maybe a system in which souls are tempered day and night, year after year, over and over by constant moral pressure is what it takes to breathe spirit into clay or to rebuild a broken image of God. That is what I believe. I believe in the anvil of salvation. I really don't wish to go over every symbol and every analogy in Revelation and try to make sense of it. We could be here forever. I want rather to allow the story to become a part of my spiritual vision. We aren't being given the answer to mysteries. We are instead being asked to look through certain lenses until we are able to see a clear picture. The woman in the story is the church. You are the woman in this story. The church that gives birth spiritually. The woman that brings new Christians into existence. The woman who brought God into existence through Jesus Christ. That's phrased terribly theologically wrong, but you know what I mean. The moon under her feet stands for spiritual domination. The stars in her crown represent her glory, and on the end times enthusiast will explain to us what it means. Let me make this simple for us, shall I? It is my belief that the woman is the church throughout time. She is Israel, and she is the new church under Jesus Christ. Through her, all believers will be born, and through her, the Messiah himself will come into the world. There is also an enemy, isn't there? There was more than one creature in this. There was more than the woman. There was a dragon. There is also an enemy, and this enemy hates the woman and hates her offspring. An antagonist, or a devil, if you like. One of the biggest hang-ups that I run into over my years of ministry are people that have a problem with the devil. One of the biggest hang-ups that people have with the Bible or with Christianity in general is our belief in a real and living devil. I believe in a real and living devil. I believe he's somewhere I can go speak to him. Crass or immature Christianity believes in an old guy in a sky with a long flowing beard who loves us dearly and a scaly red guy with a bifurcated tail who lives down below and hates us. One is God, the other is the devil. But the truth is that the Bible has all sorts of names for the evil that's out there. All sorts of names. I believe that there's an individual created being named Lucifer, don't you? I believe that there is a fallen angel, an archangel named Lucifer who hates me and hates my God, who is deeply concerned with upsetting God's plans and killing us. That's what he wants. He is a murderer, been a murderer from the beginning. He is a liar. He's been a liar from the beginning, and he is the father of all lies. That being said, even if you don't believe his name is Lucifer, even if you don't believe that Job's Satan with a lowercase s is the same thing as the New Testament church's Satan with a capital S, if you don't connect Jesus' devil with the Old Testament sin that crouches at the door, well, that's okay. I don't think you have to. But let me clue you into what you might be missing. Even if Lucifer is different than the devil, even if the devil is not the same thing as Job's Satan, even if Jesus' Beelzebub is not the same as our Prince of Darkness, all of this points in one direction to one reality. I really don't care how you interpret the different passages about an adversary. The stark truth is this: we have one. The scripture from beginning to end warns us of a particular kind of power that has set its hostility towards the Creator and against all those in creation who have been born of the Spirit. That is what we know. I don't care if you call it the prince and power of the air. I don't give a hoot if you want to call it the negative zeitgeist. It matters little what you call it. It matters little if you call it devil, demon, or even old scratch if you prefer. The truth is this: you have an enemy that hates you. This enemy is God's enemy too. Time to choose sides. And you are living within the story in which all sentient beings throughout the universe are being asked right now, pick a side. Will you join the dragon and his totalitarian regime as they seek to destroy the light and set up a throne of darkness? Or will you join your strength and your soul to the forces of light that Chris Wally calls the Lamb among the stars? My banner will be clear. My standard will be definitive. My Lord is undefeatable. You get this right. If you get this right in your life, you'll get a lot of things right. As it is written, so it shall be. And in that moment of faith, you will watch the devil flee in terror from you. Because it has all been written. And here is what is written. The devil will sit below the birthing stirrups of each and every single individual whom God calls into spiritual existence. He will try to devour the child as he is being born. With his tail, he will bring down angels, kings, and stars to ensure that the child dies, and that quickly. 7 heads of authority with 10 horns of power will gather the major powers of the earth together in a unified front to take down the Lamb among the stars and humiliate their grand and glorious leader like they did on a cross so long ago. Unfortunately for him and for them, it has been written. It has been written over and over again to where the wheels have become apparent to us in this day. The cycle is consistent and the wheels are recognizable. Let's go over them once again, shall we? From this wheel of Revelation 12, I see this and more. First, sin crouched at Cain's door, and Cain killed the line of Abel and all the hope that his line represented. Then the Pharaoh sought to enslave God's people and bring them under the authority of the Neteru, or the Egyptian pantheon. It keeps going. The wheel is recognizable now, is it not? The children of God are drowned in the Nile. King Saul was filled with murderous designs for King David. Who would have killed the Messiah before he was even born? In Babylon, the devil worked through Haman in order to eradicate the people through whom Christ would come. And of course, 3 wise men encounter a king who wishes to be told where the Son of God is, so that he might kill him dead with the other thousands of babies that he has already killed in order to stop God's righteous Son from his rightful throne. And that is just the tip of the iceberg. The entire history of man and the entire narrative of his story has been this: a dark force is threatening the forces of light. Choose you this day whom you will serve. The devil's weapon is simple. It really is sin. Sin, unforgiven, brings on it shame and death. Philip says this: by stepping away from the ungodliness of the world, Christians are preserved from the ravages of sin. We aren't, unquote, we aren't told to win. We're not told to win. We're told to stand. We are told that Christ has already won it, as it is written. We aren't told to fight with swords. We are told to fight by standing firm on our ground in the truth. We aren't told to achieve our own salvation. We are told to be assured of it. Sin crouches at your door. He walks to and fro, seeking whom he may devour. He is a liar. He's a father of lies. Jesus' weapon is simpler yet. Have faith. Have faith that you are free from it, and have faith enough to live apart from it. He has done everything else necessary. He has provided the sacrifice. He has provided the cure. He has provided the power to endure. All you have to do is stand. Stand your ground. Believe, fear not. Sinners might behead you one day. Correct? They might behead you one day, but sin will never destroy you. I remember youth pastors when I was young telling us about how sin would decrease joy and decrease pleasure instead of enhancing it, as the devil promised us all it would. What Hefner has to do to feel desire is embarrassing, to say the least. To you young men out there, live a Christian life and find your manhood restored to you. You know how to train a god, don't you? Do you ever ask yourself why certain things are free? Bark if you understand me. To you young women out there, demand that young men love you like Christ loves the church and expect nothing less. Do not give your most precious gift away to idiots and selfish ones. The government has told you that certain things are fine, haven't they? How is that working out? The school systems don't have a clue what is good and what is evil. Universities have destroyed themselves on the back of deconstructionist pipe dreams. Ever since the 90s, education for the youth has been almost exclusively about increasing self-esteem and ego. That's worked out well for us. And yet we have produced the most, we have done nothing but build self-esteem, ego, and set up counselors at the end of every street. And yet we have produced the most depressed, drugged, confused, insane, and neurotic generation that the world has ever seen. Kind of makes you proud, doesn't it? Everyone gets an award, and that award is Bedlam. Congratulations. We have a narcissism epidemic. We have a self-esteem epidemic. We have a suicide epidemic. We have counselors and psychologists working around the clock, day and night, to help you talk about your problems and wallow in them forever. Why heal it when you can go to therapy and keep making me a good living? It's worth the money just to have someone listen to you talk about yourself for an hour, isn't it? That's how self-centered we are. But our school systems are like our politicians. If it doesn't work, double down. This passage here tells us that the bride of Christ is responsible for birthing children. She is not responsible for providing for herself. She is not responsible for growing wings and saving herself. She is not responsible for escaping King Herod by herself. She is responsible for two things and two things only: stand your ground and continue giving birth. Young man, let me tell you something bluntly. No one is good. No, not one. But you, young man, have the opportunity to add your name to the list of those that stand. Every time I've ever talked with a young person about changing their ways, they are very concerned with everyone else's opinion. Everyone else needs to change too. Everyone needs to carry this burden for me. Everyone else should conduct themselves in ways that keep them from being tempted. Everyone else should, because I can't. Well, wimp, die. Die a wimp if you wish. I remember long ago going, I'm not going to die a wimp. God gives you that right. But God also gives you the right to be counted as a child of God and a warrior of light. If you are waiting for everyone else to get it right before you do, then you will all weep in hell together. But if you are willing to stand, if you are willing to be different, if you are willing to be a Christ-like example to the world around you, then you can take control of your own destiny by giving it to Jesus. Be free from the tyranny of sin and give others a hope in which to hope. Christianity is not fair. Christianity is a gathering of those brave enough to stand in the face of the world and scream at the top of their lungs, "Get behind me." I'm so tired of young people wanting someone to fix their world for them, especially since Christ already has, if they will accept it. If you are going to envy sinners their lusts, then Christianity is not for you. If you are too weak to fight your own addictions, then Christianity is not for you. If you are too afraid to be alone that you cannot stand alone, then Christianity is not for you. Perhaps the biggest failure of Christianity is our proclamation that salvation is available to everyone when we're told very clearly, few there are that find it. Because while it is available to everyone, the Bible is clear, isn't it? Well, young man, that leaves the question with you, doesn't it? Who are you, and who do you say that he is? Are you a porn addict? Are you a video game addict? Are you lazy? Are you a male slut? Are you a truck driving, football watching, Playboy reading, narcissist idiot as fourth wave feminism would paint you? That's the way they'd like to paint you. That's not my description, that's theirs. Or are you a child of a king who will stand their ground because you are the child of a king? Love their neighbor and display the glory of Christ to a dark and dying generation, and finally be done with the devil. I'm not young anymore, and I can't make a single decision for you, but I do know this. You can wallow in the pig slop of Pornhub with all your friends, and you can ride all the village bicycles you wish to ride, but the test of a true man is found in what they stand for and in how tall they stand. I stand with Christ because Christ is King. Hail to the King.